December 2025. Shanghai. The Yangon Deep Water Port, a marvel of engineering and the planet's largest automated shipping hub, handles an astounding 47 million containers each year. Unmanned cranes meticulously lift and position cargo containers with unparalleled accuracy. Sophisticated artificial intelligence systems expertly guide shipments to their final destinations in 180 different nations. It is noteworthy that not a single component manufactured in America is utilized within this entire, vast operation. Meanwhile, a mere 30 miles away, within a highly secure research facility, Chinese scientists are engaged in the testing of a quantum communication satellite. This advanced satellite possesses the capability to transmit encrypted data that is entirely impervious to any known decryption technology, including those developed by American entities. Further south, a distance of 2,000 miles across the South China Sea, China's third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, is conducting vital flight operations. This vessel, equipped with electromagnetic launch systems that rival the capabilities of American carriers, is currently engaged in exercises with the Shenyang J-35, China's second fifth-generation stealth fighter jet. This is not merely a case of preparation for future competitive engagements, it represents a present and palpable dominance in the critical domains of manufacturing, technological advancement, and military might. While the media landscape in America remains preoccupied with cultural debates and political spectacles, China has been methodically constructing the foundational infrastructure necessary to supplant the United States as the preeminent global superpower. This transformation is not projected to occur in 20 years, nor even in 10. The transition is actively underway, a reality of which the vast majority of Americans remain astonishingly unaware. The significance of this development surpasses any other geopolitical event witnessed within your lifetime. For 75 years since the conclusion of World War II in 1945, the United States has unequivocally held the position of the world's dominant power. American military supremacy acted as a potent deterrent against potential adversaries. American ingenuity in technological innovation consistently led the global landscape. The formidable strength of the American economy dictated the terms of international trade. The United States dollar served as the preeminent global reserve currency. American corporations spearheaded advancements across every major industry. A complex web of American alliances shaped the geopolitical map of the world. This was, without question, the American century. Its culmination is not a consequence of America willingly relinquishing its dominance, but rather a deliberate outcome of China's meticulously crafted, multi-decade strategy aimed at systematically dismantling each fundamental pillar of American power: its economic supremacy, its technological leadership, its military might, its financial control, and its diplomatic influence. Every single one of these foundational elements is currently facing a simultaneous challenge through a coordinated series of actions that most Americans overlook because they are not examining the correct indicators. It is projected that by the year 2035 to 2040, China will emerge as the world's largest economy in nominal terms, will be the undisputed leader in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, will wield dominant military power throughout the Indo-Pacific region, and will serve as the central hub for a new economic bloc encompassing more than half of the global population. The United States will undoubtedly remain a powerful nation, but America will no longer hold the status of the dominant superpower dictating global affairs and setting international rules. That pivotal role will, by all indications, belong to China. It is imperative to clarify that this analysis is not intended as financial advice. Rather, it presents research data that illustrates the historical patterns of great power transitions and underscores why the challenge posed by China represents the most significant geopolitical shift observed since 1945. Allow me to elucidate precisely what China is undertaking, the reasons for its efficacy, and the profound implications for your future. To truly grasp China's strategic approach, one must first comprehend the historical dynamics that govern the rise and fall of great powers. This cyclical pattern has recurred throughout recorded history. The established dominant power invariably becomes complacent, overextends its military reach, accrues unsustainable debt, and consequently loses its economic advantage. Concurrently, a burgeoning power diligently cultivates economic strength, makes substantial investments in technology and infrastructure, strategically avoids costly conflicts, and patiently awaits the opportune moment to challenge the gradually weakening established hegemon. While this transition process can span several decades, once initiated, it invariably accelerates. In the year 1870, Great Britain stood as the world's preeminent power. The vast British Empire encompassed a quarter of the planet's landmass and population. British manufacturing was responsible for an impressive 32% of global industrial output. The formidable British Navy commanded the world's oceans. The British pound sterling was the universally recognized global reserve currency. British technological innovations, from railway systems to telegraph networks to steamships, were at the forefront of global progress. At that time, Britain appeared to be utterly unchallenged. However, beneath this veneer of invincibility, a subtle weakening was taking place. British corporations had grown complacent, failing to adequately invest in nascent technologies. British manufacturing processes were becoming increasingly inefficient when contrasted with those of rapidly emerging competitors. Britain's military was overextended, burdened by the considerable expense of maintaining distant colonies that continuously drained its resources. British national debt was steadily escalating to finance its expansive imperial ambitions. Meanwhile, the United States and Germany were on a distinct upward trajectory. America's industrial output experienced explosive growth. By the year 1900, the United States was producing 10 million tons of steel annually, a figure that dwarfed Britain's production of 5 million tons. American innovations in crucial sectors like electricity, the automobile industry, and oil refining surpassed British capabilities. American infrastructure development, encompassing vast networks of railroads and telegraph lines, was proceeding at an unprecedented scale. By 1914, the advent of World War I, the United States had already surpassed Great Britain to become the world's largest economy. The outbreak of World War I served as a significant accelerant for this global transition. Great Britain entered the conflict in 1914 and emerged in 1918 as the victor, yet financially bankrupt. British national debt had multiplied 11-fold. Britain found itself indebted to the United States for colossal sums of money. The British economy was left in ruins. In stark contrast, America emerged from the war as a prominent creditor nation, holding the majority of the world's gold reserves. By 1944, with the formalization of the post-war monetary system at the Bretton Woods Conference, this transition was definitively complete. The United States dollar superseded the pound sterling as the global reserve currency. The might of the American military provided security on a global scale. The era of American dominance had officially commenced. The entire transition from British to American global leadership spanned a period of 74 years, from 1870 to 1944, adhering to a discernible pattern: economic ascendancy, technological leadership, financial robustness, and military power, all developed while the declining power became overextended and accumulated substantial debt. Now let us apply this historical pattern to the present day. The United States in 2025 bears a striking resemblance to Great Britain in 1914. America is militarily overextended, maintaining a presence in approximately 750 military bases across 80 countries and engaged in protracted, costly conflicts that deplete its resources. The United States national debt has surged to an alarming $36.2 trillion, representing 125% of its gross domestic product. American infrastructure is showing significant signs of age and disrepair. A substantial portion of American manufacturing has been relocated overseas. The United States' previously unquestioned technological dominance in critical sectors is now facing significant challenges. Furthermore, persistent political dysfunction within the United States hinders the long-term strategic planning necessary to reverse this decline. Concurrently, China is meticulously following the identical playbook that America employed to eclipse Great Britain. It is building robust economic strength through its overwhelming manufacturing dominance. It is making extensive investments in both infrastructure and cutting-edge technology. It is strategically avoiding costly foreign entanglements. It is accumulating gold and essential resources. It is patiently waiting for the weakening established hegemon to succumb to overextension and mounting debt. Then, it will systematically launch a challenge across every strategic domain. Let me now detail the 5 distinct mechanisms China is employing to systematically dismantle American global dominance. It is crucial to understand that this is not a matter of isolated initiatives or single policies. It is a comprehensively coordinated strategy executed simultaneously across economic, technological, military, financial, and diplomatic spheres. The first mechanism is achieving economic dominance through sheer manufacturing scale. China has solidified its position as the world's foremost manufacturer, responsible for producing over 1/3 of all manufactured goods globally. To contextualize this achievement, China produces more manufactured goods than the United States, Germany, Japan, and South Korea combined. This manufacturing prowess extends far beyond simple consumer goods. It encompasses advanced manufacturing across a wide spectrum of industries. China is responsible for 60% of the world's solar panels, 75% of lithium-ion batteries, 80% of rare earth magnets essential for electronics and defense systems, 70% of the world's smartphones, and 50% of the world's steel production. Moreover, China constructs more ships than all other nations combined. Its production of electric vehicles surpasses that of all other countries combined. China also manufactures more industrial robots than any other nation on Earth. This overwhelming manufacturing dominance confers significant strategic leverage. When a nation controls the production of essential goods, it inherently controls global supply chains. Control over supply chains translates to the power to determine which countries can access critical products. And when a nation possesses the authority to dictate access, it wields considerable geopolitical influence. The United States learned this lesson with painful clarity during the COVID-19 pandemic, when a staggering 95% of antibiotics, 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients, and 70% of personal protective equipment were sourced from China. When global supply chains faltered, America found itself unable to domestically produce essential items because the requisite manufacturing capacity no longer existed. The factories had irrevocably relocated to China. However, manufacturing is merely the foundational element of China's strategy. China is not content with merely being the world's factory. It is actively ascending the value chain into high-technology manufacturing, which generates higher profit margins and cultivates strategic dependencies. China's export profile is undergoing a significant transformation, shifting away from low-value goods towards high-value technological products. In 2010, 30% of Chinese exports consisted of high-technology goods. By 2024, over 50% of China's exports are classified as high technology, encompassing semiconductors, telecommunications equipment, aerospace components, electric vehicles, and advanced machinery. In the year 2024, China exported $340 billion worth of high-tech goods, surpassing the United States' high-tech exports of $280 billion. Perhaps more significantly, China is actively diversifying its export markets, moving away from the United States and towards emerging economies, where American influence is demonstrably weaker. Trade between China and the United States has been steadily declining as a proportion of China's total trade. In 2018, the U.S. accounted for 19% of Chinese exports. By 2024, this figure has reduced to 15%. Meanwhile, China's trade with ASEAN nations has witnessed an explosive increase, exceeding $950 billion annually, thereby surpassing China's trade with the U.S., which approximates $600 billion. Trade between China and Africa exceeded $280 billion in 2024. China's trade with Latin America reached $490 billion. This strategic diversification renders China considerably less vulnerable to economic pressure exerted by the United States. When the U.S. imposed tariffs on Chinese goods in 2018, China did not collapse. Instead, China redirected its exports to alternative markets and implemented retaliatory tariffs on American agricultural products, inflicting significant damage on U.S. farmers. The ensuing trade war did not impede China's ascent. Rather, it galvanized China's strategy to reduce its dependence on American markets. Furthermore, China is actively solidifying long-term economic relationships through its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative and its technology-focused extension, the Digital Silk Road. The Belt and Road Initiative has already facilitated investments exceeding $1 trillion in infrastructure projects across 150 countries. These projects include ports, railways, highways, and power plants, all financed and constructed by Chinese companies, utilizing Chinese labor and equipment. These are not philanthropic endeavors. They represent strategic investments designed to establish enduring economic dependencies. The Digital Silk Road holds even greater strategic importance. China is actively constructing 5G telecommunications networks, laying fiber optic cables, deploying satellite systems, and developing digital infrastructure throughout Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and various parts of Europe. As nations adopt Chinese technological standards for their telecommunications infrastructure, they invariably become reliant on Chinese hardware, Chinese software, and Chinese technical support. For decades, telecommunications giants like Huawei and ZTE have been instrumental in installing 5G networks in over 70 countries. These networks will ultimately carry the internet traffic, financial transactions, and communications of billions of individuals, granting China significant influence over all of these operations. The United States is attempting to counter this development through initiatives such as the Clean Network Program, wherein it pressures allies to prohibit Huawei from participating in their 5G networks. However, China has already established critical infrastructure in a majority of the developing world. The digital infrastructure that will define the 21st century is being built by China, not America. And, as the saying goes, whoever controls the infrastructure controls the future. The second mechanism involves technological leapfrogging in the industries poised to define the next 50 years. China has strategically identified artificial intelligence, quantum computing, biotechnology, advanced materials, and aerospace as the paramount technologies of the 21st century. Consequently, China is directing an unprecedented scale of resources into these sectors, a level of investment that the United States simply cannot match. Let us first examine the realm of artificial intelligence. China has explicitly declared its aspiration to achieve global leadership in artificial intelligence by the year 2030. This is not merely a hopeful statement, it is a fully funded national strategy. In the year 2025 alone, China is projected to allocate tens of billions of dollars towards AI research, development, talent cultivation, and infrastructure. This substantial investment rivals or even surpasses the total combined public and private AI spending in the United States. Chinese AI laboratories are actively developing sophisticated large language models and machine learning systems that increasingly rival or exceed the capabilities of their Western counterparts. Prominent companies such as Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance are constructing advanced AI systems trained on datasets of a magnitude far exceeding anything accessible to American companies. The underlying reason for this is China's unparalleled access to data generated by its population of 1.4 billion people, with minimal privacy restrictions. Every search query, every purchase, every social media post, and every movement captured by surveillance cameras contributes to the vast datasets available to train Chinese AI systems. In contrast, American companies are constrained by privacy regulations, such as the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe and increasingly stringent privacy laws domestically. Chinese companies, however, face no such limitations. This significant data advantage enables Chinese AI systems to be trained more rapidly, with a greater volume of examples, resulting in superior real-world performance. Artificial intelligence is unequivocally the foundational technology of the 21st century. It will be the determining factor in who leads in the development of autonomous vehicles, robotics, drug discovery, financial systems, military targeting, cybersecurity, and virtually every other critical sector. If China achieves dominance in artificial intelligence by the year 2030, It will possess a perpetual technological advantage that will continue to compound over time. Furthermore, China is making significant strides in quantum computing, a transformative technology with the potential to break all existing encryption methods and revolutionize computing power. Unlike the decentralized approach adopted in the United States, where private companies compete independently, China's quantum program is tightly coordinated by state institutions endowed with virtually unlimited funding and access to the nation's brightest scientific minds. Chinese scientists have already demonstrated the feasibility of quantum communication satellites capable of transmitting encrypted data that is immune to interception. China has also developed operational quantum radar systems, which possess the ability to detect stealth aircraft. These are not speculative future projects. They are tangible systems currently being deployed. However, arguably China's most significant technological advantage lies in its control over critical materials that are indispensable for the development of all advanced technologies. China holds a dominant position in the global production of rare earth elements, the crucial minerals essential for electronics, defense systems, electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, and advanced manufacturing processes. China accounts for 60% of the world's rare earth production and 85% of its refining capacity. In contrast, the United States produces only 10% and refines almost none of these critical materials domestically. In the year 2025, Beijing implemented stringent export controls on rare earth elements and critical magnet materials. This was not an arbitrary decision. It was a strategic maneuver designed to exert leverage. By controlling the raw materials at the foundational level of the supply chain, China can significantly impede the production of finished goods further up the chain. For instance, if China were to restrict exports of neodymium, a rare earth element vital for electric motors, the production of electric vehicles in both America and Europe would inevitably slow down. Similarly, if China were to restrict the export of gallium and germanium, essential components for semiconductors, Western chip manufacturing would experience significant setbacks. The United States is currently endeavoring to rebuild its rare earth processing capabilities, a process that requires years of investment and billions of dollars. In the interim, China benefits from 40 years of accumulated infrastructure, expertise, and economies of scale in this sector. The United States cannot realistically expect to catch up in the short term, and China is fully aware of this reality. The third mechanism involves military modernization, specifically designed not to conquer the world, but to systematically deny America the ability to project power within the Asian theater. This aspect of China's strategy is both the most visible and the most concerning. For 75 years, American military superiority remained undisputed. The United States Navy dominated the world's oceans, and the United States Air Force commanded the skies. American technology consistently held a generation's lead over any potential rival. No nation possessed the capability to challenge America militarily on a global scale. That era is now definitively drawing to a close. Over the past 15 years, China has undertaken a systematic transformation of the People's Liberation Army, evolving it from a primarily territorial defense force into a fully capable, multi-domain strategic military power. The People's Liberation Army Navy has now surpassed the United States Navy in terms of sheer ship numbers, boasting over 370 vessels compared to the U.S. Navy's 290. More significantly, China is constructing modern and capable warships at a rate that the United States cannot match. China has commissioned 3 aircraft carriers in a mere 12 years. The most recent of these, the Fujian, commissioned in 2024, incorporates electromagnetic launch systems that are technologically equivalent to those found on America's newest carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford. The Fujian's advanced launch system allows for faster and more efficient aircraft deployment, dramatically narrowing the capability gap with the U.S. fleet. China is also actively deploying advanced stealth fighter aircraft. The Shenyang J-35, China's second fifth-generation stealth fighter, positions China as the only nation besides the United States to possess 2 operational stealth platforms. The J-35 is specifically designed for carrier operations, meaning that Chinese carriers will soon be equipped with stealth fighters, mirroring the operational capabilities of U.S. carriers. This development signifies a tangible erosion of American technological superiority. However, China's most substantial military advancements are evident in its development of missile and space systems. China has engineered a formidable array of anti-ship ballistic missiles, specifically designed to neutralize American aircraft carriers. The DF-21D and DF-26 missiles, colloquially known as carrier killers, possess the capability to strike moving vessels at ranges exceeding 1,500 kilometers. The existence of these missiles renders it extraordinarily perilous for U.S. carriers to operate in close proximity to China's coastline. If America is unable to safely deploy its carriers in the Western Pacific, it effectively forfeits its ability to project power and defend its crucial allies in the region, including Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines. China has also dramatically expanded its capabilities in space. China currently operates over 500 satellites dedicated to communications, surveillance, navigation, and targeting. Chinese satellites are capable of tracking U.S. military movements in real time. Furthermore, China possesses anti-satellite weapons that can neutralize American reconnaissance satellites, thereby impairing the observational capabilities of U.S. forces. China is also actively constructing a lunar research station and undertaking deep space exploration missions, strategically positioning itself as a leader in space technology and resource exploitation. All of these formidable capabilities are meticulously designed with a singular objective: to render any potential U.S. military intervention in Asia so prohibitively costly and fraught with risk that the United States would ultimately refrain from attempting it. China does not require a global victory over the U.S. military. It simply needs to make direct intervention in the Western Pacific an unacceptable proposition. And by all indications, China is succeeding in this endeavor. Every war game simulation conducted by the Pentagon, which models a conflict over Taiwan, consistently reveals devastating U.S. losses, including the sinking of multiple aircraft carriers, the destruction of hundreds of aircraft, and thousands of casualties. Such losses are politically untenable for the United States, thereby casting significant doubt on America's actual capacity to defend Taiwan. Consequently, if America proves incapable of defending Taiwan, its credibility across the entirety of Asia is poised to collapse. The fourth mechanism involves a financial and economic reordering through the process of de-dollarization and the establishment of alternative institutions. China is systematically constructing the necessary infrastructure to circumvent the US-dominated global financial system. As has been extensively detailed previously, China is a principal driving force behind the expansion of BRICS and the implementation of de-dollarization mechanisms, including bilateral currency trade agreements and a significant accumulation of gold reserves. China is estimated to hold approximately 4,000 tons of gold, accumulated through both official channels and undisclosed means. China has been progressively reducing its holdings of U.S. Treasury bonds, decreasing them from a peak of $1.3 trillion to approximately $770 billion. China is also actively developing the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, or CIPS, as a viable alternative to SWIFT, the dominant Western-controlled payment network. CIPS processed $27 trillion in transactions in 2024, a substantial increase from $12 trillion in 2022, signifying more than a doubling in transaction volume over a 2-year period. This robust financial infrastructure empowers China to conduct international trade, investments, and financial transactions without relying on the US dollar or Western financial systems. When the United States froze the reserves of the Russian central bank in 2022, the international community observed and learned a critical lesson. Dollar reserves are susceptible to seizure. China is diligently ensuring that it will never face such a vulnerability by proactively building alternative financial systems before they are critically needed. Furthermore, China is actively establishing alternative international institutions that directly challenge existing US-led organizations. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, established by China in 2015, now boasts 109 member countries and has financed over $45 billion in infrastructure projects, directly competing with the World Bank. The new development bank, established by the BRICS nations, provides crucial financing without the stringent conditionalities often imposed by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These frameworks enable nations to secure capital for growth without capitulating to American economic directives or political allegiances. This transcends mere financial exchange. It signifies the construction of an alternative global order designed to diminish American influence and amplify China's. Sovereign states now face a dichotomy: align with the United States to access dollar-denominated funding via the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, contingent upon adhering to political stipulations, or align with China for yuan-denominated financing through institutions like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the New Development Bank, which, while imposing fewer conditions, necessitate acceptance of Chinese sway. A growing number of countries are opting for China not out of affection, but because Beijing offers a more advantageous proposition with fewer encumbrances. Mechanism 5 involves cultivating diplomatic leverage and engaging in informational campaigns aimed at positioning China as a dependable partner and portraying the United States as a receding, untrustworthy hegemon. China's diplomatic approach prioritizes non-interference in domestic affairs, mutual progress, and collaborative achievements. This stands in stark contrast to American foreign policy, which frequently mandates political reforms, adherence to human rights standards, and alignment with U.S. strategic objectives. For numerous developing nations, China's diplomatic overtures are more appealing due to their reduced conditionalities. China has successfully normalized relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran, facilitating a diplomatic breakthrough between these regional adversaries in the year 2023. This achievement showcased China's diplomatic prowess in a region where the U.S. has encountered prolonged difficulties. China is actively expanding its collaborations across Africa, with over 40 nations participating in its Belt and Road Initiative. Simultaneously, China is strengthening its connections with Latin American countries, a region historically regarded as within America's sphere of influence. Furthermore, China is fostering relationships with Pacific Island states, which are strategically vital in the Pacific theater. China is also actively conducting informational warfare, disseminating narratives that depict America as a nation in decline, its era having passed. Chinese media outlets frequently highlight American political dysfunction, escalating income inequality, dilapidated infrastructure, rampant gun violence, and societal fragmentation. The underlying message is unambiguous. America is waning, while China is ascendant. The invitation is clear: embrace the future, not the past. This narrative resonates because it contains kernels of truth. American infrastructure is indeed crumbling, its political landscape is fractured, and its society is deeply divided. In parallel, China is erecting high-speed rail networks, developing futuristic metropolises, and pioneering advanced technologies. The visual disparity is compelling, and nations worldwide are taking notice. Now allow me to illustrate the temporal progression of America's diminishing dominance and China's ascendance. This transition is not abrupt, but follows a discernible pattern. From the year 2025 to 2030, we enter the foundational phase, during which China continues to bolster its economic, technological, and military capabilities. China's gross domestic product is projected to reach approximately $21 trillion, significantly narrowing the gap with the United States' $30 trillion in nominal terms. However, in terms of purchasing power parity, China's economy already surpasses that of the US by 30%. By the year 2030, China is expected to achieve its planned leadership in artificial intelligence. Concurrently, China will deploy its fourth and fifth aircraft carriers. The CIPS and SWIFT payment systems will continue to process an increasing volume of international trade transactions outside the purview of the US dollar. American influence in Asia and Africa will continue to wane as Chinese investments deepen. While the United States will still hold a dominant position, the prevailing trajectory is undeniable. From the year 2031 to 2035, we enter the acceleration phase. China's nominal gross domestic product will surpass that of the United States, establishing China as the world's largest economy by all quantifiable measures. This psychological milestone carries profound implications, as nations tend to align themselves with economic power rather than historical ties. China's technological preeminence in fields such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and advanced materials will become indisputable. China's military capabilities in the Indo-Pacific region will achieve parity with those of the United States, rendering any American intervention in a potential Taiwan crisis prohibitively costly. The US dollar's share of global reserves will decline below 50% as the trend of de-dollarization gains momentum. American alliances will begin to fracture as countries seek to mitigate risk by forging closer ties with China. The United States will no longer be the sole superpower. A bipolar world order will have emerged. From the year 2036 to 2040, the new order will solidify. China will emerge as the preeminent economic power, the vanguard of technological innovation, and the dominant military force in Asia. The US dollar will stabilize within a range of 35 to 40% of global reserves, mirroring the position the British pound occupied after relinquishing its reserve currency status. A multipolar currency system will likely emerge, encompassing the US dollar, the Chinese yuan, and potentially a common currency for the BRICS nations. The American standard of living will experience a decline of 20 to 30% as the trade deficit narrows and the availability of inexpensive imported goods diminishes. American military power will be largely confined to the Western Hemisphere and Europe, with Asia firmly within China's sphere of influence. The American century will have concluded, giving way to the Chinese century. This projected timeline is not speculative. It is a predictable pattern informed by historical transitions of great powers and current global trajectories. The shift from British to American hegemony spanned 74 years, from 1870 to 1944. The transition from American to Chinese dominance is anticipated to be more rapid, potentially occurring over 40 to 50 years, from 1990 to 2040, driven by the accelerating influence of modern technology. Now let me outline who stands to gain and who stands to lose from this profound global transformation, arguably the most significant geopolitical and economic shift of our era. China will undoubtedly be the primary beneficiary. It will become the world's foremost economic power, a leader in technology, the dominant military force in its region, and the nexus of a new economic bloc. Chinese enterprises will exert considerable influence across global industries, and the yuan will ascend to a prominent position as a reserve currency. Chinese cultural soft power will also expand internationally. This aligns precisely with China's stated aspirations and its current trajectory. Nations aligned with China will also prosper. Countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East that cultivate robust economic and diplomatic relationships with China will reap benefits from Chinese investment, technology transfer, and market access, flourishing within China's expanding economic orbit. European nations that maintain neutrality and engage in trade with both the United States and China will navigate this transition with relative success. Europe's strategy centers on avoiding explicit commitments to either side, preserving economic ties with China while upholding security partnerships with the US. While this approach may be precarious in the long term, it offers immediate advantages, allowing Europe to capitalize on China's economic growth while sidestepping potential American disapproval. The United States will experience the most significant losses. America will forfeit its exorbitant privilege of issuing the world's primary reserve currency. It will lose its capacity to sustain perpetual trade deficits. It will relinquish its technological leadership in critical future-oriented industries. Its military dominance in Asia will erode, compelling a strategic withdrawal to a more confined sphere of influence. American living standards will decline as imported goods become costlier and domestic production is re-established at higher price points. These are the unavoidable consequences of diminishing relative power. American allies in Asia will face arduous decisions. Nations such as Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines will be compelled to determine whether to maintain their allegiance to a declining America or to accommodate an ascendant China. This presents an almost insurmountable choice. Aligning with China implies accepting its dominance. Aligning with America risks economic isolation from the world's largest economy and the potential for military conflict with a more formidable neighbor. The majority will likely attempt to hedge their bets, maintaining security ties with the US while nurturing economic connections with China. However, such hedging strategies become untenable when forced into definitive choices. American workers will face job losses and wage stagnation as manufacturing opportunities that might have been repatriated to the US are instead directed to countries like Vietnam, India, or Mexico, rather than to the more expensive American labor market. American consumers will see their purchasing power diminish due to increased import costs. The inexpensive goods from China that have subsidized American lifestyles for 3 decades will become scarce. Prices for electronics, apparel, furniture, and various consumer goods are projected to rise by 30 to 50%. Americans will realize that their accustomed standard of living was underpinned by Chinese manufacturing, and its absence will render them considerably less affluent. American investors will experience wealth erosion as Chinese companies increasingly dominate global markets and their American counterparts lose market share. The S&P 500 index, heavily weighted towards American firms, is expected to underperform Chinese equity indices as Chinese technology giants achieve global ascendancy. The wealth transfer resulting from this transition is estimated to be between $20 and $30 trillion over a 30-year period, flowing from American economic interests towards China and its aligned nations. Now I wish to address the counter-argument suggesting that China will falter, its economy will collapse, demographic trends will undermine it, or that its authoritarian system impedes innovation. These notions are largely expressions of wishful thinking by those in the United States who are unwilling to confront the reality of their nation's decline. While China undoubtedly faces challenges including an aging population, substantial debt levels, and an authoritarian political system, these issues do not preclude it from surpassing a declining America. Great Britain encountered significant challenges at the turn of the 20th century, yet America still ascended to global leadership. China's challenges are manageable in comparison to America's more deeply entrenched structural problems. America grapples with severe issues: political dysfunction that leads to gridlock and inaction on critical matters like infrastructure, debt, and strategic planning; profound social divisions that have eroded trust in institutions to record lows; a national debt exceeding $36.2 trillion with no discernible repayment plan; a manufacturing base that has been offshored and cannot be rapidly re-established; and an overextended military-facing financial constraints. China's system, despite its repressive nature, facilitates long-term strategic planning and efficient resource mobilization. When China decides to invest in high-speed rail, it constructs 42,000 kilometers within 15 years. When America contemplates high-speed rail, it expends 2 decades in debate with minimal tangible results. When China resolves to lead in solar panel production, it subsidizes the industry and secures 60% of the global market share within a decade. When America attempts to revitalize its semiconductor manufacturing sector, it passes legislation, engages in protracted implementation discussions, and takes years to break ground on new facilities. China's authoritarian model offers advantages in strategic competition by enabling focused resource allocation, suppression of dissent, and sustained consistency over decades. America's democratic system, while morally superior, proves less effective in long-term strategic competition due to the quadrennial leadership changes and partisan divisions that hinder sustained policy implementation. So what course of action should be taken? How does one position oneself for a world increasingly dominated by China? Firstly, acknowledge the reality. The American century is drawing to a close. China's ascent is, at this juncture, irreversible. The sooner this reality is accepted, the more effectively one can adapt their strategy. Secondly, diversify both geographically and financially. Do not presume that American assets will consistently outperform. Consider investments in Asian markets, emerging economies aligned with China, and Chinese enterprises poised to dominate future industries. This does not necessitate abandoning American investments, but rather avoiding an excessive concentration in a nation experiencing a relative decline. Thirdly, cultivate an understanding of China. The majority of Americans possess scant knowledge of China's history, culture, language, or strategic thinking. Given China's projected dominance in the 21st century, comprehending its complexities is paramount. Engage with Chinese history, endeavor to learn Mandarin if feasible, and grasp the strategic mindset of Chinese leadership. This knowledge will prove invaluable. Fourthly, develop skills that possess enduring value in a multipolar global landscape. Careers heavily reliant on American dominance are inherently vulnerable. Proficiency in technology, engineering, science, and international business will remain in high demand. Skills contingent upon U.S. government spending or American consumer expenditure carry greater risk. Fifthly, prepare for elevated costs and diminished living standards. The era of inexpensive imported goods that have sustained American consumption is drawing to a close. Mentally and financially, one must prepare for a future where goods are 30 to 50% more expensive, and wages fail to keep pace. Sixthly, direct your attention towards Asia. The epicenter of global economic and political influence is shifting eastward. Developments in Beijing, Shanghai, Singapore, Tokyo, and Seoul will increasingly carry more weight than those in Washington or New York. Failure to monitor Asia means overlooking the locus where the future is actively being constructed. Seventhly, avoid overestimating America's capacity to reverse its decline. Many Americans cling to the belief that their nation will rebound and regain its strength. This is improbable. The requisite political will is absent. Financial resources are constrained by overwhelming debt. The time needed to rebuild manufacturing and technological capabilities is measured in decades, not mere years. America's decline is structural, not transient. The challenge posed by China is not a future contingency. It is the present reality. By December of the year 2025, China will be producing more manufactured goods than America. China is leading in the development of artificial intelligence. China operates the world's largest navy. China is actively constructing the financial infrastructure necessary to circumvent the US dollar. China is solidifying long-term economic partnerships with 150 countries. China is strategically positioned to become the dominant global power by the year 2040. The transition from American to Chinese hegemony is mathematically inevitable, unless America undertakes drastic and unprecedented measures. However, there is no indication that such action will be forthcoming. American politics are preoccupied with internal conflicts rather than external competition. American resources are strained by debt. American society is deeply fractured. In contrast, China is unified, focused, and diligently executing a strategy that has yielded success for the past 30 years. This mirrors the pattern observed between 1870 and 1944, when America supplanted Britain. The ascendant power amassed economic strength, invested in technology, abstained from costly conflicts, and patiently awaited the decline of the established power through overextension. The ensuing transition occurred not through warfare, but through the inexorable logic of economics. The nation with the stronger economy, superior technology, and more efficient system ultimately prevails. In 1944, Great Britain did not choose to relinquish its global dominance. It lost that position because America had simply become more powerful. In the year 2040, America will not choose to cede its preeminence. It will lose it because China will have become the stronger power. The sole pertinent question is whether one will recognize this reality before the majority does and adjust their positioning accordingly. The transition is occurring now. The future is being forged in Shanghai, not San Francisco. The dominant artificial intelligence will be Chinese, not American. The global reserve currency system will be multipolar, not dollar-centric. The military superpower in Asia will be China, not America. This analysis does not constitute financial advice. It presents research data illustrating the historical patterns of great power transitions and elucidating why China's comprehensive strategy, encompassing economics, technology, military strength, finance, and diplomacy, renders its inevitable rise to dominance a mathematical certainty, absent either a catastrophic Chinese collapse or a miraculous American resurgence. Neither scenario appears probable. Comprehending this profound transition is the essential initial step towards navigating it successfully. The American century is concluding. The Chinese century is commencing. And this transition will fundamentally reshape every facet of global politics, economics, and finance for the ensuing 50 years.